Greetings, everyone. My name is Luis Molina, and I'm the host of the Life Puro. Today, I'm going to talk to Jonathan Walker, who is involved with Delta Waterfowl. So we're glad to have him on tonight. Jonathan, thanks for coming in today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I love the studio, man. This is great.
No, thanks for coming in. So with that said, we like to offer all our guests a cigar. So did you want a cigar?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Let's give it a shot.
Yeah, so feel free. We got the cutter and lighter, all the accessories here. If you don't know or need assistance, I'm glad to offer it to you.
Yes, I will need assistance.
Okay, so here, that's yours then.
Okay.
It's the same cigar. So
Perfect.
Tonight we're going to be cutting and lighting the brand called Angelenos,
Okay.
which like Los Angeles, the Angels, made for Prometheus, and it's made by Arturo Fuente. I'm sure, I don't know how much you know about cigars.
I have heard about a Fuente. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
that's probably it. That and Macanudo, maybe.
Okay.
And that's where I start and stop with cigars.
Yep. So this is perfect. It's
Okay.
not as well known, but the quality is really good.
Okay, great.
So I think you'll like this. So help yourself. I don't know if you do matches. I like a torch lighter, and then we even have this big Bertha here of a tabletop lighter. So whatever you're comfortable with.
Sounds good. I'll
Help
go matches.
yourself. Yeah, and I'll light mine up at the same time. So like I said, Angelenos, which isn't really well known by a lot of people. It's made by a very well-established cigar manufacturer, which is Arturo Fuente, based out of the Dominican Republic. I believe it's Ecuador, Connecticut wrapper. Profile is more of a mild strength with like a creamy, kind of minerally forward profile. And this is their double Robusto format for anyone who's particular about that information. So very good
Gotcha.
kind of length to ring gauge ratio too, I feel. So, but yeah,
That's
thanks
great.
for coming in tonight. So
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
yeah. So did you want to get started on, well, let me ask you, who are you? Who's Jonathan Walker?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually grew up in Shreveport,
Okay.
which is why I talk funny, right? I kind of talk a little bit like a Yankee.
Yeah.
Or a redneck, I guess. And went all the way through high school there. Went to a large public school called Byrd. And I graduated in 99.
Okay.
Came down to Baton Rouge for LSU and really never left. So I did 4 years at LSU. And then I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. So I went to grad school. And so that was 2 years. And I got an MBA in finance at LSU. And after that, I went to my parents and I said, you want to pay for me to go to school anymore? And they're like, no. So, you know, I could have gotten a PhD in something else if I wanted to. But I was probably tired of school at that point, and my parents had cut me off. So I think it was time to go to the real world.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll never forget, I took a few classes in grad school, real estate class, entrepreneurship, public speaking, stuff like that. And I really liked the real estate class I took. And so one of our classes, we were partnered with like a local real estate person. And I was partnered with a local real estate lady, and she said, hey, you did such a good job on this project. Why don't you send me your resume after school? So this was in 2005. And so I did, and I got hired by a group called Sterling Properties. And then Katrina hit, and it was the craziest few months being in real estate. And everybody was leaving New Orleans. Nobody knew what was going to happen in New Orleans, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they all came up here, and my phone, like, I didn't know what I was doing, but my phone started ringing. Hey, can you help me find this? Can you help me find this? Every building that I showed, office space, retail space, warehouse space, people were like, I'll take it. And I was like, well, this is the easiest job I've ever seen.
Oh, man.
So it was literally trial by fire, which, I mean, you call it trial by hurricane, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the way I learned commercial real estate. And so that was in 2005. Got married, didn't immediately start to have children. So I was looking for something to kind of spend some time doing, give back, extracurricular activities. And a friend of mine who is actually a good mentor of mine, Lane Grigsby, he put me in touch with the regional director at Delta Waterfowl. And he said, look, I know you'd love to duck hunt. You should go volunteer for Delta Waterfowl. and I didn't know anything about the nonprofit world or the conservation world or anything like that. Well, here we are 15 years later, and I've been the chapter chairman for Delta Waterfowl, at least in Baton Rouge, for 15 years now. So as you know, I mean, you've been to our annual banquet. I mean, it's mainly about putting on the banquet and raising funds, but it's also about networking in the conservation community, you know, and really spreading the word about what Delta Waterfowl is doing. So it's been a really cool organization to be aligned with.
Yeah, and that's where I met you last year at last year's banquet.
That's right.
In La Berge.
Mm-hmm.
And just to give you insight into my background with duck hunting, I'm still a newbie. I think I've only been hunting for like 4 or 5 years. But it wasn't until, I don't know if you probably know Scott Sharp from...
I've heard the name, but I don't think I know Scott.
He works for the chapter out in St. Tammany Parish. I don't know specifically which one it is, if it's Covington. I don't think it's Mandeville. And I don't know how many chapters there are in the St. Tammany Parish area. But he invited me one year to go to their chapter banquet.
Yep.
And I just fell in love with just the philosophy of Delta Waterfowl, what they're about. And and the reason he hooked me up was he also sold me my gator tail boat. So
oh, nice.
Yeah, he said, "Hey, I know you're big into the duck hunt now, so like, why don't you come check out Delta Waterfowl and what they're about?" So I just fell in love and decided,
well, it's great people. I mean, the people you have so much in common with those people. You know, I mean, they're usually blue collar, hardworking, love to wake up early, love to see a sunrise, don't complain about much, you know, and really care about giving back too. You know, and that's why I was drawn to the organization. You know.
Now, can you give me some insight into the organization itself? Like, when did it start?
Yeah,
what are some of their goals? Like, any information you can impart.
And look, Louis, full disclaimer, I don't work for Delta Waterfowl. You know, I'm strictly a volunteer for Delta Waterfowl. So some of the stuff that I say, you know, may be off 1 million or 2 ducks here or there when we talk about Delta Waterfowl. But I'll tell you what I know is Delta Waterfowl is an old organization. It's 110 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been around since, I think, 1911, I think, is when Delta Waterfowl first started. And it was actually started as a research organization. They were basically doing research on why waterfowl migrated certain ways, what affected waterfowl populations and stuff like that. But then it kind of turned into a full-fledged conservation organization that basically, in the mission today for Delta Waterfowl is to secure the future of waterfowl, right, to raise more ducks, and waterfowling. So that means we want to protect the rights of hunters. We want to open up additional federal lands so that public hunters have more places to hunt. And we also want to make sure that duck hunting is around for generations to come. So, like, the people that are really, really involved in Delta Waterfowl want to see their kids and their grandkids be able to enjoy the duck hunting that we have, you know? And so that's what it's like, man, when you add that, we're for raising more ducks and we're for conserving the resource, but we also are duck hunters. I mean, that's taking a stand, you know, because not everybody, you can't get everybody on board with hunting, right? Because it involves killing and people have negative connotations when it comes to killing. But when you have that as part of your mission statement, I mean, that kind of sets you apart from being, you know, a different type of organization.
Yeah, we've had a previous guest who is big. His name's Jeff Streva. He's a big waterfowl hunter, and we were kind of discussing that dynamic in that hunters actually are some of the best conservationists out there. And it sounds counterintuitive, right? Because a lot of sportsmen are about harvesting these animals.
That's right.
But we understand that we need to increase the population too.
That's right.
If we want to continue this on. So have you had any experiences discussing that issue with, say, some of like your hardcore conservationists or big anti-hunter type people?
You know, we don't really run across a lot of anti-hunting people because we live in Louisiana. I mean, when your motto is sportsman's paradise, it's like if you're that type of person, you probably don't live here. And you know, nothing against that type of person, but they just probably find somewhere else to live. But no, I mean, Delta Waterfowl is great because it's not just about the killing, right? It's about, and like you said, I mean, without duck hunters, you don't have ducks. I mean, they're the ones that actually give back. They're buying merchandise. They're buying federal duck stamps.
Yeah.
They're the ones giving back at the banquets and stuff like that. So they're really more concerned about the resource and passing it on from generation to generation
Yeah.
than they do killing. I mean, rarely will you ask a hunter, say, what's your favorite thing about hunting? And they say, man, watching, a duck get killed, they'll say something like sitting around a campfire with my buddies, smoking a great cigar, drinking an awesome bourbon, and just catching up on life.
Yeah.
Or seeing my son say, man, that is the prettiest sunrise I've ever seen, or cleaning a duck and, cooking it and somebody being like, I didn't know duck tasted this good, and it's all those kind of combination of things. I remember my kids, when we would come back from, and this is when they were smaller, we would come back from hunting and my wife would say, well, how was it? And they were like, man, the breakfast at the camp was amazing. Like, they never said anything about killing a duck or anything like that. And then my youngest would say, I got to sleep on the top bunk. It's so, like, you don't realize that that's the kind of stuff that gets imprinted into a child's mind, as opposed to it's all about the killing. Now, I'm sure some parents, if they brought their kids and they made it all about the killing, then that would rub off on the kids. But most duck hunters, and I find this with all hunting and fishing and sportsmen, most of them would put that killing a stringer of ducks 5th or 6th on the list, and put all those other things ahead of it.
Yeah, even in my short time span as a hunter, and I haven't really had much success compared to like some other spots or other people. I'm still kind of learning.
Yeah.
But even if I don't, harvest any ducks that day, just the whole ritual of going out there, seeing the sunrise and nature, like I love that. I think that's what kind of drew me to it. It was just being out in nature first and foremost, not just the actual killing.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about just getting away from what we call concrete, right? And that could mean the office, that could mean your shop, just relaxing and getting, some of that sunlight and good camaraderie and sharing it with other people, And I think we need that, I think, like I always say, you got to have a lot of balance in your life, or you'll get kind of burned out on one thing. And I feel like, man, when you go do that, you always come back and you say, we should do that more. Right? Like, that's the first thing we say. We need to do that more. But we mean it. It's not like, oh, yeah, we should get together again. And then you're kind of like, all right.
Kind of an empty promise, or you forget about it. Or
exactly. You're like, no, we need to do that more. And I get that feeling every single time I go.
Wow. How many seasons have you been hunting duck?
So my foray into duck hunting is very interesting. So I grew up in Shreveport, but I had a lot of family in Monroe.
Okay.
Also another, small country, kind of redneck city.
I love Monroe. Yeah.
But great duck hunting over there. And so I had an uncle named Uncle Billy, and he had 3 daughters. And he decided that it was going to be his job to bring a boy hunting. And so that was myself and my cousin Daniel. And we grew up duck hunting. And so if I was in school in Shreveport and we had a week off for Thanksgiving, then I would go to Monroe and I would duck hunt. Yeah. And when we had 2 weeks off for Christmas, I would go for 2 weeks to Monroe. I mean, there was times where I would start to run into people that would say, hey, you're from Monroe, right? Because I would hunt so much over there, And, that was probably, I bet I started duck hunting 7 or 8 years old. We would actually, so we would spend holidays in Monroe because, like I said, all my mom's side was in Monroe. My dad and I would wake up Christmas morning, and before everybody got up and opened presents, we would go duck hunting together. We did that 10, 12 years in a row, where we would wake up Christmas morning and go duck hunting. And then when we would come back, everybody would be up, and then we'd kind of open presents together.
That's cool.
It's a great ritual, yeah, especially with your dad, right? Yeah.
That's the other dynamic I forgot to mention. Like, what can be appealing about duck hunting is the family involvement and bringing family members together around this ritualistic activity.
Sure.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, and I really like, whether it's family or friends, I really like bringing people that have never hunted before, because a lot of times they don't get it until they're out there. there's a professor named Luke Laborde at LSU, and he's a big donor of all conservation organizations. And over the years, he's seen his student population change from pretty much all male to now in waterfowl biology, it's mostly females.
Wow.
And, growing up, females didn't duck hunt that much. They didn't deer hunt that much. They didn't get as outside as, males did. But now what he's doing at LSU is he's actually bringing these girls on their first duck hunt every year. And he's getting great commitments from the community and other corporate sponsors. And what he's found is that a lot of these women that are going through LSU in the waterfowl biology programs, and they're looking to go out and get a job in waterfowl biology, they've never been hunting. But once he brings them hunting, then they put it together. They're like, wow, now I can see how the conservation piece is tied to hunting, and I can see how conservationists can be hunters at the same time and go out and do even greater things than they would have just being in waterfowl biology and not ever connecting that hunting piece, So that's been cool to hear about.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see that these women, what they learn, I guess, in the classroom, they can see it applied in the field, literally.
Exactly.
And they come away with, I guess, a greater application is what it sounds like.
A greater appreciation, and they figure out how to tie hunting to
with conservation.
Exactly.
They realize that the both groups' incentives are almost aligned.
Exactly. Everybody's on the same team. Yeah. Because, somebody that doesn't know much about hunting might think, one side's protecting the resource and the other side is killing the resource, and that doesn't make sense. But like you said, duck hunters and hunters in general are the biggest advocate to conservation. They're the ones that actually spend the time and the effort and the money to protect the resource more than just, somebody off the street.
Yeah. And I can't really speak for other conservation groups, even in other fields, but what really appealed me, or what was appealing to me about Delta Waterfowl was like their philosophy, their commitment to really increasing numbers.
Right.
And I don't know if you know much about, or could give me some color into the what they call the million duck campaign.
Yeah, sure.
That they implemented a few years ago. I thought that was really intriguing.
Yeah, sure. So let me go through a few of the programs that Delta Waterfowl is working on right now, and some of them have been implemented for years, and some of them are semi-new. So in order to raise a duck, you really need farmland, or what we call breeding grounds, which would be like small prairies or wetlands somewhere north of here. South Dakota, North Dakota, and pretty much all of Canada raises ducks. That's where they go migrate, and that's where they have their breeding season. The second thing you need is water. Ducks cannot nest on the land, because if they did, they would get eaten by a fox as quick as they could, lay their eggs. Now, geese don't really have that problem because geese are huge. And so when a fox comes up on a mama goose, he better pack a lunch, the goose will scare him off.
Okay.
So 90% of our ducks are raised on private land. So you're talking about farmers that own land in South Dakota, North Dakota, all of Canada. So what you really need to do is you really need to partner with farmers in order to raise more ducks. All right, so you need farmland, you need water so that ducks can nest close to the water, in the weeds, and be away from predators. And you need cooperation from farmers. So what Delta does is a few things, and I'm not going to be able to cover all these again because I'm more of a volunteer, so I don't know everything. But a few of the things they do is predator management. So that basically means we're trapping and killing predators, right? That's a good way to trap an area and have breeding success go through the roof. The second is hen houses, which basically kind of does the same thing, but it's like a nesting structure that's above the water. Think of it on a PVC pipe with a big nest that a duck can fly into and be above a predator. Think of like a squirrel not being able to get onto a bird feeder.
Yeah.
You know,
I've seen some of the videos that Delta Waterfowls put out with those hen houses, and that to me just really captured my attention.
Absolutely. Now, with hen houses, mostly mallards use those. It's weird. Each kind of duck has their own kind of peculiar identities, you know, like so mostly mallards use hen houses, but that is one of the most popular ducks we have.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a program, which this is the one I'm most fond of. It's called Working Wetlands. So if you go back to what I said about, 90% of our ducks are raised on private land. So a farmer that owns land in, say, Canada is really worried about one thing: how effective and how efficient can I be growing whatever it is, corn, wheat, milo, right? Well, if it's wet on his property, he's got some incentive to basically drain that water off so that he can farm and make more money farming crops, right? So if he drains that wetland, well, the duck's going to fly over his property and say, well, there's really nowhere for me to nest here, even if it's a natural, wet, perfect place that a duck's been for years and years. That farmer may catch it on a drier year, drain that wetland, and farm it. So what Working Wetlands does, and this is actually a Delta Waterfowl initiative, they go to these farmers, they look at historical maps, and they say, hey, we realize out of the 500 acres that you own, this 100 acres over here is wetlands, and man, this would make a lot of ducks. You tell me how much you make farming this 100 acres, and we'll cut you a check for that amount.
Oh.
And so it incentivizes farmers. It shows that Delta Waterfowl is an organization that wants to partner with them instead of saying, you're a bad person for trying to farm that 100 acres. They're not. I mean, they're trying to feed their family, right?
Absolutely.
So Delta Waterfowl says, hey, you keep it in wetlands. Let's raise some ducks on it, and we'll pay you exactly the amount that you'd make, farming wheat.
Yeah.
And so I think that was started in 2018. It was such a popular program that now the Canada Farm Bill picked it up and funds it through their federal dollars.
Wow.
So now it's part of the Canada, we have the U.S. Farm Bill. Canada's Farm Bill actually has picked that up. Super cool. And then the one you mentioned, the $1 Million Duck Campaign, or the Million Duck Campaign, it's a lot more than $1 million it takes, but what they're trying to do is they're such a big research organization, and they care about the numbers. And, during COVID, we always talked about the science, right? Follow the science. Mm-hmm. They're just data junkies. And they're like, we know if we implement these strategies, working wetlands, hen houses, predator management, then we can raise a million new waterfowl each year, if we implement these strategies. And it gave them kind of a big, if you're aware of it, that's pretty awesome, because it gives them a program where they can say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And it helps raising money a little bit better, instead of just saying, hey, come to our banquet and your money's just going to go in the general fund, right? This is what we're trying to do. This is the Million Duck Campaign, and we're going to put 1 million extra waterfowl in the sky every year, And so it helps people donate to like a specific cause. Mm-hmm. And it's been great. Delta's raised over $200 million in like 2.5 years, I think, for this campaign.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So,
That's
this
awesome.
is going to be, I hate to say the word perpetual and put words in my mouth or other people's mouth, but
that's the hope.
This campaign is going to go on for a long time. Yeah.
I was so bummed out I missed this year's banquet. We had a cigar event, so I couldn't make it, and we scheduled that out months beforehand. How did it go this year?
It was good.
Just anecdotally, I don't know if you have numbers or insight, but looking.
So this year was our best year. It was our best year by attendance. It was our best year by dollars. I think 2023, we're only 3 years removed from COVID. So, every banquet and every nonprofit took a hit, right?
Yeah.
So we're finally kind of back up to where we need to be in terms of numbers and dollars. And people had good duck seasons the last 2 years too. It was kind of down like in 19, 20, 21. The 21, 22 were better duck seasons than 2020. And so I think that helps too.
Oh, yeah, sure.
cigars out.
Yeah, go for it. Light up while you're doing that. What I want to ask. So that was another topic I wanted to pick your brain about. Were some of these duck numbers? I know for Louisiana, I guess there's so many factors when maybe trying to explore this topic, but I know for sure Louisiana was known as like a duck capital of this country at one point. But I guess in the last few years or decades, we've seen the I don't know if it's the flight pattern changing or what's going on. Like when I started, I would be going to like Delacroix and Southeast Louisiana, and I would hire a guide because I just didn't know the sport. So, and they would give me insight into like, man, it just seems like it's getting worse over there.
Yeah, and you hear them say things like it's not the same or it's worse than it used to be and all that. Man, that's tough because I mean it's like how to boil crawfish, right? Everybody's got an opinion on how to do things a little bit different. And so I do have an opinion here, and I think I share most people's opinion where we in Louisiana, we've got a few things going against us. We have coastal erosion, which usually means saltwater intrusion, and waterfowl don't like to hang out in saltwater. You also have, starting in December, if the weather turns a little bit warmer, crawfishermen start going in those fields and they're pulling crawfish out. Because again, I mean, they're making money from crawfish. So it's tough for a duck to sit there and say, man, I'm going to hang out in this pond when I got crawfish boats coming to and from. And then you go up to Arkansas and Missouri and, you hear the word short stopping a lot, well, the ducks aren't coming all the way down. And that's semi-true. I mean, there's a lot of people that take this duck hunting sport very seriously, especially in Arkansas and Missouri. So you have more and more people that are managing for waterfowl, where they're actually planting crops, they're not harvesting them, and they're basically creating small sanctuaries for waterfowl in one area of their farm so that they can duck hunt and shoot ducks on the other area of the farm. So it almost acts as like a mini refuge.
Yeah.
And the reason they do that is what they do is they'll farm, say, a rice field, call it 500 acres. And it'll be tons of ducks in there, and they'll sit there all year, and there's really no reason, unless there's just a huge freeze, to come to Louisiana. And then on the other 500 acres of this farm is timber hunting, which is like the cat's meow of duck hunting. I mean, watching mallards float through the trees into your decoys is just like it's a feeling like no other.
Is that what you've done in Monroe when you're growing up?
Well, in Monroe, we hunted fields.
Okay.
Yeah, but in Arkansas, there's a lot of green timber hunting. So that's what a lot of people are doing up there. They're not even touching their fields so that they can have the best possible hunting in their woods. And so if you're doing that, over and over again in Arkansas and Missouri, and you're feeding these ducks and you're not even touching hundreds and thousands of acres, then there's really no incentive for a duck to come to Louisiana and mess with saltwater crawfish farmers, and
the coastal erosion
and a little bit of warmer weather too, So
I was going to ask how much has that played a factor? Is the recent warmer winters?
I think it's just a combination of everything. I think it's a combination of everything, because you do see a push when there's really, really cold weather of ducks coming into Louisiana. But even when it's really cold, some of those ducks stay up in Arkansas and Missouri. I mean, there was days last year, I don't know if you remember when it got real cold? Like I think it was 19 or 18 here. And in Arkansas, it was like 9 or 12, and there were still ducks up there. They just kind of hung out on the moving water. Yeah.
Wow.
I know. So less and less incentive for a duck to come all the way to Louisiana. And you hear about, a lot of the hunters are saying, man, it just hadn't been, what it used to be. And I think it's for a combination of reasons. And that's sad, because you want to be able to hunt close to home, right?
Right.
I mean, you're packing up all this stuff. You're usually bringing kids. You don't want to have to travel. I mean, shoot, I go hunting in Arkansas, but it takes me 6 hours, I always joke my plane has 4 wheels, like I have to get in the truck and hoof it up there, So, but it's kind of like you really need to drive where the ducks are, though. You don't want to go duck hunting where there's no ducks either,
Yeah. Have you done mainly hunting on private land? Have you ever done public? And if so, like what can you give? Like what information can you give me about public hunting? Because I bring that up because there's a guy I bought a pirogue from, and that's what he does is public.
Oh, he does.
But,
yeah, strictly public hunting.
But he kind of illuminated to me that he goes where people don't go. But I guess there's more work involved, maybe more research. He knows the terrain, and he says there's plenty of duck where he goes. So
yeah, if you're willing to put in the work, there's Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries does a good job managing WMAs, right? Wildlife management areas. And really I think a day pass is like $5 or something. You can pretty much hunt over 1 million acres in the state public, And the problem is you have to know where the ducks are.
Yeah.
So you have to scout. You have to know how to get there. You usually have to get up there early to maybe, beat somebody to the spot. So it's just a lot more work involved, where if you're able to pay for a duck lease, when you show up, like the whole property's for you, right? So you're able to, get up when you want, jump in a four-wheeler and just drive down a levee, where some of these people are launching boats at like 3-something in the morning to try to get to a spot, and then after their hunt, they're actually scouting and trying to find where the ducks are for the next hunt, So it is just a lot of work, but I totally agree with him. If you're willing to put in the work, there is plenty of places to hunt in this state. You're talking about over 1 million acres of wildlife management area in this state with good resources, boat launches, maps, and you just got to get out there and spend some time, That's the biggest issue that we fight, right, is time. Because we all have jobs, a lot of us have families, you got kids, and so it's like, am I going to really spend 2 or 3 days scouting for waterfowl, and then I gotta wake up super early, drag a boat, go out there, and maybe I picked the wrong spot, and now I hadn't killed anything. So
frustration sets in.
Exactly. Yeah. You got the the 5-year-old asleep in the bottom of the boat.
Yeah.
So anyway, but there are opportunities, and so we can appreciate that in Louisiana.
Because what I learned early on, and the gentleman I mentioned, Scott, when I was getting into it, like it's an expensive sport, or it can be.
Yes, it can be, sure.
And to me, it seemed in the beginning when I didn't know anything, it seemed counterintuitive because, it's just a small animal. Like, how expensive can this be? Whereas I guess if you're looking at it from a value standpoint, deer hunting is the way to go, right? It's not as much, I guess, in terms of cost and time involved, and you get more meat, right?
Sure.
Per harvest, but
sure.
It just seems to be a rich man's sport, but maybe it doesn't have to be if you're willing to do the research and
that's right,
and go go to these places that no one else might even venture to.
Right. No, it doesn't have to be a rich man's sport, and that's the cool thing about Delta Waterfowl is they're trying to open up more opportunities. They work with the Department of the Interior that tries to open up more and more land for hunting. One of the things they've done is, on some WMAs across the country, you can only hunt, say, like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Okay.
And Delta Waterfowl will come in and say, man, this is a really good spot to duck hunt. And what you're doing is you're killing the working class because these people aren't able to go hunting, during the week. So they'll actually go and fight with the Wildlife and Fisheries Commissions and say, we need to open up, or the federal government say, we need to open up hunting on Saturday, Sunday for some of these places, And they've been successful in doing that. So again, that's part of the mission statement, right? Not only we want to raise more waterfowl, but we want to help waterfowl hunters. And that's just part of what they're doing as well.
Yeah, very noble. So for anyone interested, and they don't even have to be a duck hunter, I guess, to attend a banquet.
No.
What can one expect? How does one go about participating?
Yeah, sure. So obviously there's a website, right? deltawaterfowl.org, not .com. And they can come to our banquet. What's really cool is, so the last 2 years, there's been the Delta Waterfowl National Expo in Little Rock. And it just got announced that the next 2 years are going to be in Baton Rouge.
Whoa.
So they will be at the River Center the next 2 years. And I want to say the date's sometime late July.
Okay.
Like think of the 26th through 28th or something like that. And I think last year they had like 30,000 people attend this Delta Waterfowl what they call an expo, but it's basically like their national convention. People flying in from all over the country. They've got speakers, they've got dog trainers, they've got duck calling contests. They have all these vendors setting up and like selling you the latest gear, right?
Yeah.
But again, you don't have to buy it if you don't want, you don't want to. So
Yeah.
But it's from what I've heard, I didn't go to the last 2 years in Little Rock. But from what I've heard, it's a really cool event. And again, it's good outreach because you're going to probably reach some part of the general population that they're just not duck hunters, but they might go to this expo and say, this is something I really want to get into, or it's an organization that I want to get involved in and, spend my time, resources, and money.
Yeah, it seems
getting involved in.
Yeah, it seems like there's great opportunity for corporate sponsorship, even if they don't duck hunt.
That's correct.
Just as networking and to support a great cause.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's awesome. I didn't know it was going to be in Baton Rouge the next 2 years.
Yeah, I think it just got announced maybe a few weeks ago. So everybody was really excited about that.
Awesome.
And Delta Waterfowl has really grown in Louisiana. So I think it was only right. And they're going to move it. It might be in Mississippi in a few years or, somewhere else in the north or something in a few years. But I think to be able to touch different parts of the country is going to be really cool from an outreach standpoint. And then once you get in there, you realize, wow, I didn't know that Delta was doing all this stuff, like the predator management and the working wetlands and the million duck campaign, and then all of a sudden now you've got more donors and then kind of the rest takes care of itself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I see that you're drinking from this cool camo Delta Waterfowl Yeti or something like that. I don't know if it is Yeti. And I see some of the bourbon here that you mentioned that for duck hunters, bourbon, spirits, cigars, duck hunting all go hand in hand. It's a beautiful culture. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, part of the duck hunt for me and a lot of my friends is the first night or the second night, you're sitting around a fire, telling some lies, hanging out with buddies. And usually it involves some kind of beverage, and it seems to me like bourbon's been in for the last 10 or 15 years. Have you kind of felt that?
Oh yeah.
I feel like lately tequila's maybe kind of hotter than bourbon, but for me, I've always loved bourbon. And my cousin who I grew up duck hunting with and still duck hunt with, he's a big bourbon guy too. Yeah. So we're always talking about what bottles we have and what bottles we can't get our hands on, right? So
we were talking about the allocated stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. So tonight I brought just a few of my favorite bourbons because, when people think you're like a bourbon expert, even though I'm not a bourbon expert, I just like to drink bourbon.
Yeah.
When they think you're a bourbon expert, they ask you what your favorite bourbons are. So I figured tonight I would bring, my 3 favorite bourbons.
Okay.
And so this one is Blanton's. It's like the first single barrel bourbon. That's their kind of claim to fame. And then of course they've got these little horses that if you collect these, they actually will spell Blanton. So if you look, this is an L.
Oh, I didn't know
on
that.
the horse. Yeah. So a lot of people will collect the BLAN. I don't even have all of them.
Yeah.
I think it's like McDonald's Monopoly. Like one of them's going to be really hard to get. I think like the S. So I don't have all of them, but I've got a lot. And then we've got E.H. Taylor or Colonel Taylor, and they make a few different ones. This one's called Small Batch, but they also have a single barrel now. And then this is probably one of my favorites. This is Eagle Rare, and it's a 10-year-old bourbon. And, all 3, what's interesting is that all 3 of these are now owned by Buffalo Trace.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like in every industry, there's like some, conglomerate that ends up owning, like Jim Beam's one of them, Buffalo Trace is another one. They end up owning like a bunch of different brands, which is kind of sad, but maybe probably makes it a little more readily available now. But all 3 of these are actually owned by Buffalo Trace, but they're all a little bit different. They all have their separate distilleries. They just happen to be owned by the big guy now, you know, which such is life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But bourbon for me, I like it. I like the taste better than like a scotch or a vodka or a gin or a tequila. And I don't really know what it is. It's probably just because I drink more of it than anything else. But to be, everybody's like, well, what's the difference between a bourbon and a whiskey and all that? All I know is that bourbon, it's got to be 51% corn. A lot of people think it's got to be made or distilled in Kentucky, which is not true. But I think most bourbons are from Kentucky because it's something about the water. When it hits the limestone, then it has a different flavor.
Yeah.
It's got to be made in America. It's got to be 51% corn, and I think the third one is it's got to age in oak barrels.
Yep.
And I think
American,
I think there's
American
some
white
other.
oak. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. I think
our
there's
last
maybe
guest
some.
told us.
Oh,
about
really?
That. Yeah.
Okay, well, good. Well, at least I'm on the same.
No, you're right. Yeah, from what I remember, those are all the right points.
At least nobody will watch it and be like, "That guy's a liar."
Yeah. Oh no, and look, we've had like customers that come into the shop. I love the honest ones when they tell me, "Look, I don't know anything about cigars. I just know I like smoking cigars." You had mentioned. And most of a lot of duck hunters that come in here, they buy for the season.
Sure.
That's the only time they really smoke all year.
Sure.
And we don't have any like snobby attitude. Like we're happy to make recommendations, I don't like the people who are like not genuine.
Right.
They pretend to be an authority and they totally like tell us the wrong things. And meanwhile, the staff's kind of like looking at each other.
Yeah,
like,
you can flush those guys out pretty quickly.
But we'll still help them out. But no, I just find that funny. But yeah, no, I mentioned to you, I appreciate the bourbon sector. I just don't know as much about it.
Right.
But I still try to learn a little bit about it because it applies to the cigar industry too. Same things that go on.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. And y'all have been very helpful because I do come in and I'm basically like, all right, I like something mild. I have to kind of whisper so I act like I'm a sissy or anything.
No.
I'm like, I like something mild. I don't smoke very often. I don't want a huge one. I just need like something small. But give me a bunch because as soon as I light one, my buddy's gonna be like, "Oh man, you brought cigars," and I can't be like, "No, I only brought one."
Yep.
So I have to get like 6 or 8 of them. But y'all do a good job of saying, "Hey, well, all right, so you like a Macanudo, and you got those last time?" And I'm like, "Yeah, all right, well, if you like that, then you're going to also like this, and give me a few to try." And they've always been great. So that's really cool.
Awesome.
But yeah, you mentioned that the allocation in the cigar industry, with bourbons, I'm not sure how all the allocation really works. I do know the more a store orders of a certain brand, say they order a bunch of Buffalo Trace brands, then the more of the allocated and the harder to get bourbons that they'll get per year. You might have a small liquor store only get 3 Blantons and 2 Eagle Rares and 5 Colonel Taylors, a year. Where if you've got like a large liquor store that buys a ton of stuff, they may get, cases of the stuff, of the allocated. And then, who knows what they end up doing with it. Sometimes the owner of it might be a grocery store. The owner of the grocery store, his son wants to keep all the allocated stuff for him and his buddies. That's fine. Some of them end up putting them in raffles and selling raffle tickets for a good cause. And other ones, you had mentioned, like put together bundles, right? So it incentivizes people to say, hey, I'm going to get you an allocated bourbon, but you're going to have to buy, this other cigar too, or this other bourbon. It kind of gives people the opportunity to get their hands on the allocated stuff. But it seems like that's the fun part, like trying to find how do I get this, and then it might become like a relationship thing, right? They're like, man, Lewis, when he finds one of the allocated cigars, he like calls me, right? He'll call me and be like, hey man, I got the cigar you really like, in stock. And it kind of creates like almost like a relationship,
Absolutely. No, that's
with your clients and customers.
Yeah, and that's what I try to advise someone, especially if they're new into cigars and even alcohol. Pick your retailer. It doesn't have to be us. Just pick a home store. Create that rapport. Show your face a lot to convey to that owner or manager that, hey, you're here to support them in the long term, not just looking for the allocated stuff.
Exactly.
But supporting them on the core stuff that they can get every day. And that's the approach that we've taken in how we deal with allocated cigars is we'll try to bundle it because we only get as much allocated based on the performance of the core. So we'll do to the customer what the manufacturer imposes on us too.
Sure.
And that's like, I mean, I'm not sure if that's right or wrong, but it just seems a little bit more fair. And
I think that, used to you'd have to act like you're, tough and you only drink fancy bourbons or fancy wine. Remember, I mean, $100 bottle of wine you had to get at a restaurant because that made you look fancy or something. But I feel like now people are more comfortable just smoking the cigars that they like, or drinking the $25 bottle of wine because they like it, or if you like Blanton's, only drinking Blanton's and not drinking anything else, or only drinking Old Charter or Jim Beam because that's what you grew up drinking. Like, drink what you like and don't make any apologies for it. I feel like there's more of that kind of comfort culture now, where it's not like you don't have to drink the fanciest stuff, whether it's wine or bourbon or tequila anymore.
Yeah, that's right. Like, when I do drink bourbon, I like the Henry McKenna, but like the brown, I guess the brown bottle. I don't know what the specific name is. It's not that Henry McKenna that everyone wants. It's the Bottle and Bond, that green label. I go for like the less expensive, more available stuff because I just like it and I like the price point. So
yeah, well,
I'm sure snobs,
right?
And I'm sure some snobs might look down on that, but like, I don't care. I like it. I like the price point. I can get it. I don't have to
thing about bourbon too. Even though these bottles may, if you can find them, they'll probably run like $100 each bottle. Okay.
That's at like MSRP if the store doesn't like.
Well, if the store doesn't mark them up, this is going to be $69. This is going to be about $59, and this will actually be like $39.
Okay.
But most of the times when you find them, they're about $100 a bottle. But with bourbon, I'm not drinking this whole bottle in a night.
Yeah.
These 3 bottles will take me a whole year to drink, know? Now, if I bring one to the duck camp, it disappears real quick, But it's not like you're spending $100 on a bottle and then all of a sudden it's gone in one night. You might sip on this thing one day, one night, and then, go a week without doing it again. So it's not like you're dropping a ton of money all at once, to have it all disappear.
That's right. I see the same thing with cigar people. Especially like those who maybe only smoke a few times a year, they're willing to drop $50 per cigar, or even some. Now we have $100 cigars.
Do you really? Wow, I didn't realize they got that expensive.
Yeah. Davidoff is very well known. They're regarded as like the highest end, most luxury brand. We have one from them called the Oro Blanco, which means white gold. That one now, I think, with our excise tax, is fetching about $650 a cigar.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And now, like the last few years, we've been seeing a lot of manufacturers trying to push that envelope. Now, like Oliva came out with one that's like $300. It's going to be like $300. It has like gold foil on or gold leaf on the cigar. Yeah. So they're really pushing the envelope.
But, if there's a market for it, then why wouldn't they do it?
But I think a lot of those consumers, they might only buy one.
Sure.
And that's not like their regular everyday purchase. We have one guy, he loves these $100 Davidoffs, just get a scoop at a time. I like those customers, but but no, the reality is people are gonna find or choose a cigar that's in their budget.
That's right.
And readily available.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And if they like a certain brand, then they might stay with that brand. Is that kind of how you see?
Yeah, I think the majority of our consumers, they kind of stick to like a family of a cigar maker or profile. I don't really you don't really see too many consumers like comparing the whole cigar market that will try like just be discoverers. I call them like me. Like I want to try everything.
Right.
I usually find most of our consumers, at least in the brick and mortar, when they find someone, they stick to that same cigar.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, it's a lot of similarities then in the liquor and the cigar industry.
Yeah.
So are all these? Do you have to have relationships with people from other countries in order to get this stuff? How do you order your cigars?
Yeah. So in the American market, typically so we're a retailer, we will order direct from the manufacturer. What that means is that manufacturer, they will have a factory, say in Dominican Republic or Honduras or Nicaragua.
Right.
They have their own importing office, usually in Florida, in Miami.
Okay.
But it can be anywhere in the U.S.
Yeah.
And so technically we're ordering from that importer. So I'll give you an example. Drew Estate. They have their own factories in Nicaragua, but they have their own importing house in Florida. So we're technically ordering from the Florida firm.
Right.
Even though it's kind of the same, it all goes to the same parent company. But what we've done too differently, besides just buying the name branded cigars direct from the importer or manufacturer. We'll actually now go to these factories in Latin America.
Wow.
Create our own blends, our own lines. And
that's cool.
Yeah,
like a house brand almost.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But taking it a step further, because a lot of these importers offer like a house blend.
Yeah.
They have a program of like, hey, this is a cigar you can market as your own house blend.
Yeah. And
even though
can you modify it at all?
most manufacturers don't want to do that. It's just more logistics.
Okay.
So that's kind of like the weird. It's not like a secret, but it's not something that a lot of end consumers know about. And I kind of like to give that information out because I'm transparent. I don't care.
Well, and the chance of your consumer going to Honduras to buy, specialty cigars is pretty low, right?
Yeah, and it just doesn't make sense. I mean,
right.
Unless they're down there on vacation.
Right.
But then again, it might not even be the same blend that you would find us offering.
Sure.
Because some of these like house blends have a specific recipe or anatomy.
Gotcha.
And so even if you go down to like the direct, it might not be the same.
Right.
Then you got to verify: are you actually buying it from the right factory? Not like this.
Just go buy it. Just go buy it here.
Exactly. But no, we've taken the extra step of actually talking to some factories direct, making our own blends. We come up with the blends, or at least what we do. Like we don't even know how to blend per se, but we know what we're looking for in terms of flavor profile. So we'll give them some direction of what we're looking for. They'll send us several different prototypes. We sample them.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and then we'll decide on that. So next year we should be having 2 more like fully dressed brands. Like that's a whole another set of like work and things that go on behind the scenes, like designing the package, like taking account every little minutia of detail. So but I mean, it's rewarding because we're creating something proprietary, something that we love.
You tasted, you liked. That's cool. And your clients are probably going to like it too.
Yeah. And that's what we hope so. I mean,
and you kind of know the price point too, right? Yeah. So they'll sell.
Yeah.
They do that with bourbon also. So you can actually go to Kentucky. Let's say you go, like a friend of mine did this with Maker's Mark. So they went to the Maker's Mark distillery. They went and tasted a bunch of different Maker's Mark, and they picked like a blend, right? And they said, hey, we want our own barrel. And so you basically get a barrel. Now, you don't get it then. I mean, it's got to age and all that stuff. And a few years later, you get bottles that may say your company name, or a lot of times, like if you go to, like Calandro's is a big bourbon grocery store here. It might say Calandro's barrel pick, but it's on the bottom of a Blanton's bottle.
It'll be stamped with that, or at least printed.
That's right. And so that barrel, that, the owner of the liquor store, the owner of the grocery store went up there, tasted it, liked it, ordered a barrel of it, and now they'll sell it as you put your company name on it. And I've seen people buy a barrel, get a bunch of the bottles. I forget how many bottles a barrel makes.
Yeah,
it's a ton.
that are
and
yielded.
Like give it out for Christmas gifts, right? So it's like Jonathan Walker with Maestro Merle Commercial Real Estate barrel pick, and like all my clients get a Christmas present with that information on the bottle. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Great
But
marketing.
it's still a brand that It's a Maker's Mark. It's a Buffalo Trace. Or not everybody does a barrel pick. Like some of these guys may be like, hey, we're too fancy for that. But I think that's a cool way of doing it. And it kind of sounds like it's a little bit of the same in the cigar world with y'all going down and doing that, kind of house brand.
It's basically like a barrel pick of sorts.
Exactly.
But I guess, it's a little like what we're doing. We don't have to go that far, but we're going like deeper.
Sure.
Like I'm finding a box factory. I'm dealing with the vendor who prints the cigar bands. Like we're really like doing everything.
But what's the label say? Will it say y'all?
It's a trademark. Yeah, we've come up with trademarks.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, because the trademarks came through. One is
so you're not naming it Habana Port. You're naming it
like its own brand that maybe if we want to, we could maybe sell across the country. But for now, like we're just happy to offer it in store.
Gotcha.
So we have one that we trademark called Buff Gras.
Okay.
So if you're familiar with Mardi Gras culture, the Buff Gras, the fat cow.
Okay, yeah.
The tradition in New Orleans where, your final red meat.
Yeah.
And if you know about the Crew of Rex in New Orleans, they one of their floats is the Buff Gras. It's this fatted calf or bull, and it's decorated, and that signifies like the last red meat you had before Lent.
That's
Lent
really
season.
cool. Yeah, so you'll have a label and you have a box and all that. Wow.
And very kind of the branding and the packaging we're designing will be more of that Mardi Gras kind of centric, like Louisiana or New Orleans focus.
Yeah,
in terms
that's
of like
really
the branding.
cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
But we already have some now that are also Louisiana themed, but they come in bundles because that's easier for us to like package.
Gotcha.
It's one less step, and it keeps the cost down.
So you're not selling those individually then?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, like, you will?
Yeah.
But you have to buy them by the bundle is what you're saying.
No, I'm saying like they come packaged in a bundle. They're not boxed.
Oh, I see.
But the consumer can buy it by the single, or if they want the bundle.
Okay.
I'm just saying we already started with some proprietary brands like Lanyap. We trademarked that.
That's cool.
Yeah, but we wanted
Louisiana,
to offer.
So you throw the Louisiana flair.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, but it's a good price point. It's like in the $5 to $6
good price
range.
point, and it's not crap, right? I mean, you're like, no, I went down there, I smoked this, I picked out the exact blend, I knew the price point you want. Give this a shot, you know.
Exactly.
Because you're not gonna pick one that's just a good price point and a terrible cigar because you know you're gonna sell them once and everybody's gonna be like, well, don't buy that brand because that's no good, you know. Like you want people to continue to buy, you know.
Yeah, and so there's cigars that we smoke ourselves.
Exactly.
So we're happy to recommend it because we smoke it ourselves too.
Yeah.
We just wouldn't push an inferior product or something we didn't believe in.
Sure.
But to answer your question, you asked how many bottles of whiskey are yielded from a whiskey barrel.
Yeah.
About 200 to 250 bottles.
Okay. Yeah, that's a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you're going to be in it for probably, $10,000 a barrel. But I've got buddies that have gone in together on it. It's almost like buying a cow. You know how people are buying like full cows now, and like splitting up the meat, and you're like, all right, you take 100 pounds, I'll take 100 pounds, you know? It's kind of like that. Like, hey, let's go in on a barrel of Blanton's together, you know?
Have you heard of Sean Segura?
God, name sounds familiar.
He owns an operation like that. We had him on a previous episode. He raises prime grade beef.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
But that's how he sells it. He's not really in supermarkets.
Right. It's just direct to consumer and word of mouth too.
Yep. And it's awesome.
Because once you have that meat, it's like, man,
He ruined me. Like I can't.
Is his really graded prime?
Yeah. That's what he goes for. Like he if you want to go back and listen to it, but like he will use genetics and science to determine even like will this calf yield or could be graded as like
that's
prime.
Right. That's right.
And it's all right here in Ethel, Louisiana, not too far from us, maybe an hour and a half. But that's how he sells. I just bring him up because you have to buy. That's a caveat. You got to buy like the whole
cow. Yeah. No, and some of them will do halvesies, right? Because they might have another client that says, "Hey, whenever you have a half a cow, you know, let me know."
Yeah.
My father-in-law has about 100 head of cattle. They live in Arnaville. Do you know where that is?
Yeah.
It's kind of by Opelousas, in the Lafayette area.
Yep.
And so pretty much every year we split he kills one of his cows, goes and gets it, drops it off at a slaughterhouse in Karen Crow, and we pick up our meat, man. It's the greatest Christmas present we could ever ask for. So we get a third, they keep a third, and then my sister-in-law's family keeps a third. So for you and your family, I'm assuming are going through that, right? Oh, yeah. How long does that last? Does it last a full year? Or? Oh, yeah. Yeah. It lasts a whole year. Yeah. Because what we've learned is, especially having kids, is most of what you go through is just the ground meat, right? The random cuts like the beef tips, and they have something called like a 7 steak, and then of course you have sirloin, and then you have round steaks. A lot of people think, hey, I'm gonna have like 100 pounds of filet mignon. I mean, that's not the case. I mean, one cow is gonna give you 2 sides of tenderloin that are about this big, so you're not gonna just all have fillets and ribeyes. So most of what we found is kind of some of the obscure parts were just grind it and make it ground beef, and that's the part that takes us a long time to go through. Because I mean, it literally is. So most of the cows that he kills are around 900 pounds. Okay. And then the hanging weight, you usually lose about 20% of that. So that's hanging. That means no skin, just bones and meat that they hang for, I think they hang it for about 7 to 10 days. And then once they process it, it gives you about 400 pounds of meat.
Okay.
And so if you're splitting that 3 ways, I mean, that's 100 pounds of meat. So if you're talking about making tacos or spaghetti one night, if we have about 100 pounds, 50 of those are going to be ground meat. So you're talking about eating, 1 pack of ground meat every week, and that's about a year,
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure you save, if you're talking about it from like a math standpoint, you probably save a bit more.
Well, the beautiful thing about the
Well, at least
family
you
is
know.
that's the Christmas present, right? So we don't have to pay for it,
Oh,
So, I
what?
mean, our grocery bill goes down a little bit.
That's awesome.
A little bit with that. And
Yeah.
it's cool because, it does save you money, but it's cool because you know where it came from. Like it's coming from family too. So it's almost kind of like part of the character of eating, from the land, it's cool when you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, even if you had to pay out of pocket, like, that
Sure.
the quality is going to be good. It's coming from family. So no, that's awesome. So I wanted to ask you this, what are some of the differences between Louisiana culture in Baton Rouge versus Shreveport?
Oh man. Yeah, it's totally different. And it's not all bad. I love to make fun of my Shreveport buddies.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Shreveport, so I don't have much bad to say there. But again, I somehow have still kept this like redneck voice, right? Even though I've been in Baton Rouge for 25 years. But I'll give you an example. So we host every year 2 of my friends from Shreveport. They come in town for the LSU games. And they usually they come more than that, but for the 2 games, 1 football game, they'll bring their entire family, kids included, And then the second time we do like an adults only weekend, which is going to be the Florida game this year.
Oh, cool.
And so every year they come down, we end up going to like a new restaurant, right? Because in Baton Rouge, we have, a lot of restaurants and good restaurants too. And it might be whatever the newest thing is. It could be, Roca Pizzeria one day, or it might be Supper Club the next or something like that. But like every time they come down and they come to, like, for instance, last week we went to Barracuda, the taco place on Government Street. Yeah, the little outdoor.
Mm-hmm.
So we went there, and like my Shreveport people, they freak out. They're like, "Man, y'all have the best." I mean, you could bring them to just like a little pizza joint, and they're like, "Man, y'all have the coolest places to hang out."
Yeah.
And it's like when you go to Shreveport, it's kind of the same. You kind of go to the same places. So I always laugh because they think Baton Rouge is like the big city, even though it's just kind of. And I think it's because, I mean, Baton Rouge checks a lot of boxes. You got the state capital here. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a college town, so you're gonna get that younger crowd, and you're gonna get like that energy in the city that you might not get in Shreveport. And Shreveport and even Monroe, I mean, they're very close to other states. So I mean, you're kind of getting that Texas, Arkansas culture feel. I mean, think about this. And we picked a bad night because the Saints are playing right now. But I mean, a lot of the Shreveport people, it's closer for them to go to Dallas and go to a Cowboys game than it is to drive to New Orleans and go to a Saints game. So, I mean, you got a lot of people up there that are Cowboys fans. Yep. So, the culture is just a little bit different, But it is interesting because it is totally different. I think they always say, like, I-10 is it's the difference between totally Cajun people and totally redneck people,
Yeah. And I grew up.
I've got a little bit of both in me, so I can say that.
Yeah. No, and look, I grew up in Metairie, and having lived here now for 10 years, like, for me, I love this state in that every little region, whether it be Acadiana or Lafayette, Lake Charles, St. Tammany, Shreveport, Monroe, Alexandria, Baton Rouge, like, each one has like its own little island of culture and just values, and I think it's cool. All joking aside, I mean, we can all kind of poke fun at each other, but at the end of the day, I mean, everyone's still Louisiana. But you are right about the Dallas Cowboy thing up in Shreveport. They're more about the Dallas Cowboys up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny. And then, some of them, some of those people that grow up in Shreveport, they'll end up going to, instead of feeling like they really have ties to LSU, they might go to, Arkansas,
Oh, wow.
Although, Arkansas, University of Arkansas is all the way up in North Arkansas, in Fayetteville. So,
yeah.
It's not that close.
So going back to the hunting in Monroe, obviously I've always heard it as like like almost like a capital, another like hot spot for duck hunting.
Yes.
And obviously with Duck Commander.
That's right.
Yeah. What is it? Why did it develop as such like a duck hunting spot?
Yeah, so Monroe was always like a very rice intensive farming community where if you come to South Louisiana, until you get to the marsh, you're going to run into a lot of sugarcane. And ducks don't land in sugarcane because you don't ever flood sugarcane. And they don't eat sugarcane, you know. So Monroe is not only close to the Mississippi River, right, because it's on the east side of the state, but you've got all this rice, and rice means ducks, you know.
Okay.
I mean, I think the rice capital of the country is Stuttgart, Arkansas, and it's just and that's why there's tons of ducks in Stuttgart because it's all rice. I mean, rice is a duck's favorite food. You know, probably a close second would be soybeans. You know, and not everybody is flooding soybeans, but to grow rice, you flood it. You know.
Okay. So yeah, you got the food source in the rice, but also the water in which the rice.
You got it.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Mississippi River, which, I mean, obviously one of the flyways is called the Mississippi Flyway. So ducks are using that, whether it's at night or during the day, to migrate, you know. So they're passing by Monroe. And so really, I'd say for Louisiana, if you don't have a fabulous place on the marsh, probably the second or the first best place in Louisiana to hunt ducks is Monroe.
Okay.
So I hunted there I had a duck lease in Monroe for 20 years, I think. Yes, I was hunting with Uncle Billy. He owned some land up there, and then my cousin Daniel and I got into a duck lease in Monroe, and we ended up losing that lease to another group, so that was kind of a sad day. But we've hunted. I hunt with family and friends in South Louisiana, and then we do have a duck lease in Arkansas as well. So
okay.
So yeah, matter of fact, I talked to my son today, and we kind of went over what opening weekend was going to look like in Arkansas. You know, I was talking to him about, all right, we're gonna leave on Friday, and when do you want to come back? You know, we don't have to be back until Thanksgiving, right? So we can maybe hunt Saturday, Sunday, maybe even Monday, Tuesday, you know, if we want to, and if the hunting's good. I mean, it's something about that opening weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the ducks are comfortable. They have no clue that it's about to be opening weekend, right? Yeah. So they're stacked up. You usually gotten some pretty cold weather already because it's the middle of November, God willing. I mean, let's hope it's cold by then. And so it's just it's a great time. There's waterfowl everywhere. You're at the camp, and there's geese and ducks flying over you all the time. And you usually have good hunting success, and it's usually not as cold as December and January. So to bring the kids for opening weekend is perfect because you usually have decent weather. You know, it's not as cold. It might be in the 30s or 40s, but it's not in the 20s, you know. And then you've got opening weekend, which just means that the ducks have been sitting there for 2 or 3 weeks, not bothered at all. And then you wake up that Saturday morning and they're like, oh man, what's going on? You know, I got lights and four-wheelers and decoys and everything's kind of crazy. So the hunting success is good. And so you see a lot of waterfowl opening weekend.
What's the fastest you ever limited out? Like you yourself, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you know, usually you're with a group. Yeah, I mean, I rarely hunt by myself. I hunted by myself twice last year. It's like usually you come up hunting and then somebody's got to leave early, right? And you're like, man, I can't. I mean, we're on a heater, right? It's like leaving a dice table. You just don't leave a hot dice table. So I did that last year, and I mean, it usually takes like an hour or two, but I would say, I mean, opening days in Monroe, hunting with my family, we would have 6 to 8 people in the blind, and I'm talking about less than an hour, you'll kill 36 to 48 ducks.
Wow.
I mean, it's as fast as you and the dogs can pick up the ducks and actually physically bring them back, get everybody safe again, and then the next group of ducks just lands right in the decoys. And you might, I mean, if you got really good shooters and you have 6 or 8 people, 6 or 8 people in a blind and the duck's decoy, right, 20 yards or something, I mean, you can kill 8 to 10 ducks out of a group. Yeah. So that adds up pretty quick.
Yeah. What's your favorite type of duck to hunt? If you choose like one, I guess breed.
Well, I mean the most famous duck is a greenhead. It's a male mallard, right? And you can only kill 4 of those per person per day, and so that's kind of like the crown jewel of duck hunting in Arkansas. Is you want to kill your 4 greenheads per person, per day. I would say for me, man, I love the look of a pintail.
Me too. Yeah.
Love, they call them chocolate heads, right? And at the end of the year, their tail gets longer, as they mature and as they get older, and then their tail gets longer. And it's a very smooth flying duck, and it's the duck that I would mount too. I've got one mount in my office of a pintail, just a real, real pretty duck. And you can only kill 1 pintail per person per day. Okay. Yeah. Because they're kind of dumb breeders, actually. Pintails are weird. One of our Delta guys, his name is John Devney, he says, man, a pintail and a John Deere tractor go to war every year. Because a pintail he said they're such a dumb breeder because, like I mentioned to you, ducks don't usually breed just out in the middle on dry land because a predator's going to get them. I mean, they'll just drop a nest on dry land, and a farmer's like, I mean, what am I supposed to do? This pintail's nesting right here. Like, they don't really think they don't think, oh, well, this is a wetter year, or maybe this is a better place to nest here. They don't really think
long term. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh.
So, and that's why the limits are a little bit tighter for those, because they're not as, they don't breed as well, and there's not as many of them.
Yeah. I never heard of that term, chocolate head. So that's a nickname for
because
the
they got
pintail.
that brown head. Yeah, chocolate head. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've yet to harvest one. That's a goal.
Oh man, yeah, you need to make that a goal. Beautiful birds, and you can kill them in Louisiana, so you don't have to go far to kill a.
Yeah. I was telling you, I talked to a previous guest, Jeff Streva. He hunts. He's been gracious enough to invite me the last few years to his spot.
Yeah.
And it's in Terrebonne Parish. And for whatever reason, his spot, he's in with a large group. I don't know how many acres it is exactly, but I mean it's got to be at least a few thousand. I gotta, if I have to guess. Anyway, for whatever reason, like their spot just brings in just huge quantities. Now I forget the type of bird it is.
It could be teal. I mean,
no, there's some teal there.
Teal are very readily available in Louisiana. We kill a lot of blue wings during teal season, which actually opens in September here.
Yeah, how did you do? Did you go?
I went on one hunt and we did phenomenal.
Okay.
Yeah, we did great. I have a friend that owns some property. If you were on I-10 heading towards like Lake Charles, you would take the Lacassine exit.
Okay.
And go south, kind of near Jennings-ish, Welsh.
Okay.
Got to go once and killed a great limit of blue wings, so that was great. But Louisiana, I mean, we probably kill more green wings than any other state, I would guess. Yeah.
And
that's the best eating duck too.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Yeah. I agree. Do you think there's a difference in taste between the blue wing and the green wing teal?
If there is, I can't tell the difference. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As someone with a lifetime amount of experience, what would be a good tip for a beginner duck hunter that you would offer?
I would say find like a duck hunting mentor, right?
Okay.
Find somebody that is passionate about it, but also likes to bring people that have never hunted before. Like I love to do that, even though it's kind of like one of those things, with your kids. Instead of saying, let's do this activity together, and then you get frustrated and you're like, I can do it, and let me just do it real quick, and them not learning how to do it. You need to find somebody that is passionate about it, but you also need to find somebody that's patient.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's hard. I mean, sometimes you got to learn to blow a call. You got to learn when to move and when not to move, or when to stick your head out of the blind and when not to. And then you actually have to shoot a moving target, which is not easy for most people, So you have to find somebody that's patient. So like you said, your friend that invites you every year, I mean, you need to find somebody that really enjoys bringing somebody that's going to take a little bit of work,
Yeah.
And if you find that person, and they may hunt public land, they may hunt private land, they may have some fancy place in South Dakota that they go to every year. But if you can find that person that's really passionate and likes to bring, fresh hunters,
Mm-hmm.
that's the best thing to do. I mean, and it could be an uncle, a friend, employer,
Yeah.
it could be anybody, but that's what I would suggest, because everything else, once you go on one good hunt and have a good experience, and like you said, you may kill 2 ducks. The good thing about duck hunting is you rarely kill 0, right? I mean, there's always one duck that's going to be like, all right, man,
Yeah.
this one's for you. So there's always going to be a little bit of a rate of return there where you're like, man, that was really cool. And again, for most people, it's like, man, I didn't realize, the sunsets were so pretty out here, or that, those mallards work like that over the decoys, and then they see them circle, and you can like almost communicate with the birds. They don't really realize that until you've actually been on a hunt. And then again, it's more about kind of the camaraderie and the food and the sitting by a fire and having a good bourbon, having a good cigar. It's like once you put all that together, then you realize, I can really get into this hunting. And that's when you see people start to really burn some money on, now I got to get a gator tail like you bought. Now I got to get Sitka, jackets and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, they show up and next time and they got all this gear on, the tags are still on it,
Yeah. What's your dog situation like?
So I had a dog.
Okay.
I had a black lab named Allie, and she died a few years ago. It's probably been 3 or 4 years ago now, and I haven't replaced her. We replaced her with a Jack Russell, but he is no duck dog. I mean, he's as big as a duck, right? He's 12 or 13 pounds. He chases squirrels all day, So I mean, he'd be a great squirrel dog if you need one to hunt, because he chases them all day in the yard. But yeah, I don't have a dog right now. So right now it's me, or it's a buddy that's got a dog. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I got into 2 years ago. Bought a lab. Yeah. And I've trained.
You have a lab?
Mm-hmm, I've trained it myself. Yeah. He's not fully there yet. I'm hoping though this will be his first year to bring him out. I'm gonna go take him to that spot that my friend
that's cool.
has, just to give him some exposure. But I can tell he's gonna be really good. He's just eager just to retrieve, and
hunting with a dog is so cool. And I mean, really, dogs are like anybody else. They just need reps. I mean, just like the more you go hunting, the more you know where the ducks like to land, how to call them, when to communicate with them, when to actually pull up and pull the trigger, how to set out the decoys. Dogs need all that too. I mean, the more hunts that they can go on, the more retrieves. This one's alive, or I'm smelling this, or I mean, I've seen dogs on their first hunt pick up a decoy and bring it back to you. I mean, it's like they need to learn too.
Yeah.
And so the more hunts you can go on with the dog, the better, because nothing can replicate actually going on a hunt, right? I mean, you can train him with a dummy in the backyard all you want, but until you have all the sights and sounds and wind and gun blasts, I mean, that dog's not going to know what to do. But then all of a sudden, after going, 30, 40 times, he knows where to go, how the ducks are going to fall, if there's a live one, if he's going to dive, all that stuff. So it's cool watching a dog get better and better. It's a really cool thing.
Yeah. That's actually probably the most gratifying part of this journey of mine so far, is like watching working with the dogs. And
a lot of people will say that. Yeah, they're like, I can't even envision myself duck hunting without a dog, because it just adds that extra layer to like, man, call, set up, find the ducks, set up, call, shoot, and the dog grabs it and brings it back. I mean, it's like, that's life right there, man. That's living. Yeah. I mean, that's as good as it gets. That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So how old's your dog?
He will be 2 in November.
Okay.
Yeah, next month.
And where'd you get him? Did you get him from a trainer?
Texas. Yeah, from a kennel, and had good pedigree.
Bloodline, yeah. I mean, that's the key, right? They just kind of come out of the womb being like, here I am, I'm a duck dog, let's figure this thing out together.
And what really hooked me looking at the pictures when I was researching it, it's classified as a yellow, but it has more of like a orange, almost kind of reddish fur. But they classify it as a yellow. I'll have to show you a picture.
I wonder if it's got did it have any golden in it? Like a golden retriever?
I didn't see that in the pedigree. And I don't know much about, like dogs and the pedigrees, but I've heard I don't either. I think there's some people that even call some of these labs or classify them as red labs. But then that's kind of controversial. I don't really know the full story, but according to the papers, it's a yellow. But if you look at the coat, it doesn't look like a typical yellow.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably good from a camouflage perspective, right? Because you don't want it too white, you know.
Yep.
Because then it might stick out too much.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a little bit of a darker color is better.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited to bring him out for his first like real on feed.
Yeah. So do y'all have a date already set, or
it'll probably be
that?
Not really. It'll just probably be in late December or January when it gets colder.
Yeah.
Because I'm still afraid because where we go is in the marsh, and I'm afraid of the alligators.
Sure.
Yeah. So I don't even want to take him out if it doesn't get cold. You know.
Isn't that crazy that you have to like really think about that? And look, alligators are. I mean. Because right now, from what I've heard, you can't get much money for an alligator right now.
Yep.
You know, the meat and the skins, and I don't think there's a lack of maybe tanning companies in the state right now too, because the tanning companies are like, we're not getting any money from it. So I feel like that's caused the gator population to skyrocket.
We talked about that in that same episode.
Oh,
Jeff.
You did, yeah.
Yeah, there was an article, I forget. I think somewhere in Homa they talked about that issue with the alligator population. It's just too much. It's just too high. And like you said, to your point, there's no incentive for the meat. Like the prices are just way too low. That's also another reason why, because I turkey hunt as well.
Oh, wow.
Why the turkey population is low in this state is there's no money in trapping of the predators.
Oh, that's
like for
interesting.
The pelt. Yeah. So a lot of these, whether it be foxes or coyote or whatever, they're just eating all the eggs and just decimating turkey population. At least in Louisiana.
No, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I heard about the alligators that, in order for them to really be worth something, people are actually genetically farming alligators. Because when they genetically farm them, they can get them to 3 to 4 feet, like the perfect length. They can cut them perfectly, and they're exactly the same look on each side. So when you're making a purse or boots or whatever, then it's like a perfect...
Yeah, you're getting uniform, like a uniform product. Yeah.
Where if you go in the marsh and kill a 10-foot alligator, he's been fighting every other alligator and every other predator, so he's nicked up, he's missing a leg on one side. He's got a scar over here, so... That's what I've heard is really hurt the alligator population, or at least the pricing on it as well.
Yeah. There's one client of ours who I want to try to get him on the show. What he does is hunt alligator and I guess other nuisance predators for the state.
Oh, wow.
And he's kind of told me some stories about, like, I guess, going to Angola and kind of taking care of controlling some of that population. So I want to get his take on that topic, too. But he's very interesting, and he's also a bourbon guy too. So
wow,
yeah, but
sounds like a good guy. Then.
Yeah, exactly. Cigars and bourbon. He's told me about some hunts. He's gone down even Mexico to like hunt. I think cougar or some other like big cat. So yeah,
there's a lot of different people that get into a lot of different. I mean, there's a lot of avenues for hunting and fishing.
Yeah.
I was at a wildlife and fisheries roundtable last Thursday. It was at the Crown Plaza, and they covered a ton of different topics. One topic that they're really talking about now is the black bear population in Louisiana. So there's a lot of black bears in Louisiana. And what they're trying to do is they think there's enough to start actually hunting them. Okay. Now, I mean, it wouldn't be like, hey, bear season's open, go kill 20 bears. But it would basically be like some kind of lottery where if you we realize there's thousands of black bears in the state now. Yeah. And if you own more than 500 acres, then you'll have a chance to put your name in a hat, and you might get like one tag. Yeah, you might get one tag for the year 2025, and you can harvest one bear. You can sell that hunt, for a pretty penny, I bet, to somebody, to kill a bear. But it's some of the pictures I've seen from my buddies that are like putting out cameras that this year. For deer, they put out game trail cameras. I mean, they got bears on them, and they're like, I don't even like to park the 4-wheeler and walk to the stand anymore. I mean, they're seeing that many bears. So hopefully pretty soon they'll be. I mean, that's pretty crazy to go from, because isn't our Louisiana animal like our state animal like the black bear? I mean, and then they kind of went close to being endangered, and then now
They're thriving.
Don't want to say the word everywhere, but I mean,
Right.
anybody who knows anything about deer hunting knows that bears are everywhere now. So that's a great success story to be from almost endangered in the state to where you're able to harvest a bear now. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a sign.
Another good thing that what Wildlife and Fisheries is doing too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd love to see that. I just bring up, I guess, exotic animal. I have a friend who lives in New Hampshire, and the last few years I've been trying to enter into their lottery for moose.
Oh, really?
They do a moose hunting season, but it's only lottery based. They only give out X amount of tags. So, but I haven't won yet. So hopefully one year.
Those are hard to get. I wonder if some of those are like political too,
Yeah, I don't
Or if it's
know.
really a lottery,
Yeah,
is some guy pulling them out of a hat, or if he's like, hey, give one to my cousin. And he's like, all right, well, you're the winner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but what I understand is like, if you don't know the terrain, like it's best to hire a guide. So they actually have guides
for sure. Yeah.
that can help scout for you and pretty much do all the legwork. So you come out successful. I think I'm not mistaken, but if I'm not mistaken, I think the hunt is only like maybe 2 or 3 days.
Right.
So you only have that window,
Well,
small
I think
window.
you've got to walk up and down mountains for like 48 hours and probably camp in tents too. I mean, you talk about public hunting here. When I said it's hard, I mean it is hard up there.
Where are some other spots that you've hunted, whether it be duck or other animals?
Yeah, so I'm really kind of like a duck purist.
Okay.
I mean, I really only like duck hunting, and I feel like it's because of my the time. Like I don't have time to pick up another hunting hobby. But if somebody's like, "Hey, you want to go deer hunting?" I'm like, "No, I want to go duck hunting." You know. Yeah. Now, if there were some other hunting seasons, like turkey would be a good example, then maybe I could see myself kind of getting into turkey where it doesn't overlap with duck hunting.
Yeah.
But deer and duck are kind of the same.
Yeah.
At the same times. But I've hunted ducks in a bunch of different places. I mean, my favorite place to hunt them is Canada. I've been with my dad a few times. And, you feel a little guilty because when you get up there, I mean, it's basically, that's where the ducks are born, right? And the geese are born. So, I mean, they are literally seeing the first decoy that they have ever seen in their life. And they're like, you give them one, you don't even have to blow a goose call. You're like, and they're like,
really?
oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
You do not have to be a professional to hunt geese and ducks in Canada. So, literally, you're killing them on their first migration sometimes. Sometimes you're killing 2 and 3 and 5 and 10-year-old birds. But a lot of the times it's like ducks and geese are born here. They hit the first decoy and you're killing them. So, a lot of good success there. So that's a fun trip. Because we don't ever get to kill Canada geese down here. They kind of stay on the Texas side and they don't migrate all the way down. But they're that's a fun place.
Yeah. I've always seen some.
Turn it off.
Oh, it's all good. I've seen some though, like around LSU lakes, but I guess those aren't the ones that are migratory. I guess they kind of chose.
Have you seen? Are they Canada geese?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they end up, on local golf courses. You see them. You see them kind of on the side of interstates and big flocks, and those I don't even know if those fully migrate. I think those just kind of stay year round. Yeah. Yep. And they've got, I think they call them resident geese. And so resident geese actually kind of hang out all over the country, and they end up just kind of over time not migrating.
Okay.
And so they'll end up just staying in little pockets where they're fed and where they don't feel like they're endangered. They can eat, the grass. They don't have to eat much, the grass and stuff like that. But most of the Canada geese are full migrators.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of different species, but in Canada you're mainly killing lesser Canadas, which are a little bit bigger than a duck, and then greater Canadas, which are huge.
I think those are the ones I see in LSU lakes.
Maybe, yeah. I'm not sure if those are the big ones or not. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They might. The graders might be bigger than that. You're talking about like 4-foot wingspans.
Holy cow!
Oh yeah,
that's big. Yeah, I find that interesting with some waterfowl or geese, where I guess you have some of these rogue groups that pick a spot and just stay there forever.
That's right.
Or for generations.
That's right.
I'll see mallards in Metairie, like in the canals or Lafreniere Park, but I guess those aren't the migratory ones.
No. And over time, they've kind of lost their genetics, too. Their coloring are kind of jacked up, they're used to eating bread and,
Yeah.
And in New Orleans, I mean, who knows what else they're
Yeah.
they're
Some
eating.
hurricane drinks or beignets left over.
Exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
but those are not migrating and not
Okay.
ones that I couldn't imagine even like opening one of those up and seeing what it looks like, you know.
Yeah, it's true. Might not be a good one to harvest.
No, when you see a fresh migrating duck, like their feet are really orange because it's something about when they're flying at a high altitude. It's something about the oxygen or the blood in their feet. Yeah. So when you pick up like a mallard in Arkansas on a cold day, you might say, man, they call them red legs, even though they're almost so orange that they're red.
Okay.
And you're like, man, those things probably were migrating. It could be a wives' tale, but that's what I've heard.
Oh, interesting.
Because
Okay.
some of those ducks will fly like 1,000 miles in a day.
Oh,
Like they'll
man.
catch the jet stream on a cold front and just get, miles and miles above the Earth's surface.
What?
Oh, yeah.
1,000 miles a day?
Mm-hmm. I read an article the other day that I think like there's a waterfowl called a brant, and I think there was one that they put radio collars on some of these things so they can like figure out the migration patterns, and I think one went 3,000 miles in a day.
What?
Yeah, I'll have to look that up so make sure I'm not lying.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty impressive.
But the point is, they can travel far
Oh
distances
yeah,
in a day.
and I mean it's in their DNA, right? When God says, "Hey, here's a cold front, hop on," I mean they know this is the day, this is the time to do it.
Yeah.
They don't just get up one morning and it's like, "Oh, it's a pretty day, let's go." I mean something in their fiber says it's time to go. You know.
And I'm sure the moon plays into it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Pressure. I guess there's so many variables. Like that to me is what's intriguing about this sport.
It's crazy. Like a little duck can figure all that out, but then you might trick them into coming landing over your decoys.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why hunting's great because they can't be patterned. I mean, and that's why people are always talking about them. Why aren't they coming down? Or what happened today? Or man, it's a cold front. So why didn't we have success? It's like
I see.
it's always changing and it's hard to figure out. So that's why there's always conversation about duck hunting, because if it was always predictable, it'd be like, all right, well, let's just wait until it's 32 degrees and December 15th and let's go duck hunting. But that's never how it is. It's always changing. Wind and cold and weather and humidity. And like you said, moon. I mean, some hunters might be like, man, we didn't have success today, but, it's because that full moon last night. And you're like, we killed them on a full moon last time,
Right, right.
So it just gives us something to talk about around the fire, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly. Well, I want to keep this conversation going, but unfortunately, I think we're going to be wrapping up. So we have one final segment. If you want to partake, it's called the Final Puff. It's like rapid fire.
Okay.
Are you up for it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So number one.
Do I have to answer quickly?
Well, you can just think about it.
Okay, just whatever comes to mind. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So number one, Tabasco or Crystal or other hot sauce?
Ooh, I'll go Louisiana hot sauce.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
I like vinegary, but not too spicy.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice. Favorite vacation destination?
Ooh, I'm gonna go. We went to Park City, Utah this summer, and got out of the heat, and that's the place to be in the summer.
Okay. Park City, Utah.
Park City, Utah.
In the summer.
Yes.
Number three, the ideal person you would want to smoke a cigar with, alive or deceased, or drink a bourbon.
God, that's a good question.
Yeah, it could be historical or family, alive or deceased, whatever.
Yeah, I'd say the best bourbon I've ever had was a Friday evening of opening day about 5 years ago. My parents actually accidentally kept a bottle of, if you remember Old Charter, I mean, people used to drink 8-year Old Charter. So this was a bottle of 10-year-old Old Charter.
Okay.
That had sat in my parents' house for probably another 10 years. So I bet this bourbon was like 20 years old. And they don't make 10-year Old Charter anymore.
Okay.
And we had that, but we opened that bottle the Friday night before opening day, and it was with my cousin Daniel that I told you about. The best bourbon I've ever drank. So if I could do that again, that's what I'd do.
Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess that would be number 4. Desert Island cigar. Typically, I ask, what would be your Desert Island cigar or Desert Island bourbon? That would be it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then the ideal person you would want to have that bourbon with.
Yeah, that was Daniel.
And with
my
Daniel.
cousin
Okay.
Daniel.
Perfect.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Two and one.
Yeah.
And then finally, who would you want to see on a future podcast here?
Oh man. I think you could probably get. I'm trying to think somebody from that's like in the community, like an LSU person.
Yeah.
Because I always think that like the LSU, football players are always very interesting. Because like you've got all these fans that are trying to like, figure out what these kids are trying to do. And I mean, when you break it down, you have 18-year-old kids playing football. You know, but it means so much more. So I always want to try to get in their heads. So I'd say one of the football kids, maybe Mason Taylor or Malik Neighbors. Would be cool on a podcast.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to someone in that, I guess, focus or concentration, just because, especially in today's NIL era.
That would be cool. And I don't think we realize like how much practice they actually, I mean, when they wake up, they watch film, and then they go to class, and then they do practice, and then they, they're like, they have a meal that's already prepared for them, right? And then they have to go to more practice, and then more film, and then they're gone for Thanksgiving because they're playing a game the next day. Like it's a weird, kid life.
Lifestyle.
At 18 or 19 when you're a really good football player. So I think that's always intriguing.
And also, I'd like to ask them the thing with so I'm always looking, especially at the end of a game, especially in the SEC, the cigar smoking. I'm seeing more of that. It seems like in the last 5 or 10 years, whether these be these players smoking on the field. Yeah. I saw a fan, I forgot what game it was, this weekend, just a fan on the field just smoking a cigar. I'm like, really? That's cool. Yeah.
I saw one in the stands this past weekend. Now, he didn't have it lit, but he had it in his mouth, walking up to his seat. So I was like, man, I wonder if he's going to try to light that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you see any, increase in sales after Joe Burrow lit that?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
That's impressive.
And the cigar, he was smoking, we made sure, because we didn't have it, we made sure to order it right away.
Right.
And boy,
did
we
you
blew
know
through
right then you needed to order that? Or did you kind of
No, I look for that. Anytime in popular culture or athletics, some event that happens, and if they're smoking a cigar, especially here, Joe Burrow, that was so iconic. We jumped on that.
Impressive.
Yeah, and we rode that wave. Although it just hasn't, that same cigar hasn't really been requested much.
Yeah. Well, I mean they go in waves, right?
And we saw it again with the the baseball team.
Oh, that's right.
They were smoking cigars. I forget what. Now I just blanked out. It was just a few months ago. But we, I think it was Bocock Brothers. I don't know if you're familiar with that brand. One of the brothers attended LSU.
Really?
Yeah, and it was one of their cigars.
Crazy.
Yeah, actually that.
He probably handed them out.
Yeah, I don't know how that worked out. Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah, so we had some people coming in days after the championship asking for that cigar. We had it. So yeah,
that'd be a good person to get too, like a baseball player.
Yeah.
Because, there were so many big personalities, Dylan Cruz, Paul Skeens, Tommy Tanks White, that was a cool baseball team to watch.
It was.
Success aside, it was nice to see them win, for sure. But, they had some
personalities.
Trey Morgan, that was a really cool team to watch.
Yeah.
He actually went to Omaha for the first weekend. That's the first time I'd ever been.
Oh, how was it?
Yeah, it was awesome. Omaha, if you could go to that, they do it right. The people are friendly. The visitors are very welcome. Everything is very organized. Omaha is a great, I don't think
probably family friendly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. It was great.
I understand they love it when Baton Rouge makes it.
Oh, it was unbelievable. They were like, y'all are LSU fan.
Come on down.
All the bars and restaurants are like, please, will LSU make it to Omaha? Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, our fans travel well.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, Jonathan, thank you very much. It was a fun conversation.
Enjoyed it, man.
Yeah.
It was fun.
All right. Thanks again. And everyone, until the next cigar. See you.